As an OG fan of the Assassin's Creed series since the very start, I am just heartbroken to see the current state of this franchise. I struggle to even keep myself awake playing Odyssey and Valhalla with all their mindlessly redundant content and copy-paste filler. And when I think that Assassin's Creed used to be my favorite game series back in the day, I can't help but wish for AC to just return to its roots. I know that the problem with today's Assassin's Creed lies deeper than the individual mechanics alone, but let me just start from its surface. So, with a very heavy heart, here are some of the things that have been removed from the AC games that I desperately want to return in the future. Let's start with small gameplay mechanics. Number 1, the Hidden Blade as an actual weapon. This is one of the most head-scratching omissions that doesn't make sense ever since AC Unity came out. The Hidden Blade, for me at least, is one of, if not the most iconic weapon in video game history. And in the first AC game up until the Ezio Trilogy games, the Hidden Blade is an actual weapon entity that you can select, along with the sword, the dagger, and your fists. What's cool about this is that you can eject the blades from your bracer and make them stick out as long as you want. This adds to the cool and badass nature of the games back then. And it's not just for show, because you can use them in combat as an offensive or counter weapon, and you can also select the blades in assassinating injured enemies down on the ground to end their misery before they eventually die. Number 2 is the wall climbing limb physics. Once again, another huge bummer for us OG fans. This, alongside the Hidden Blade, are some of the main reasons why we fell in love with the first game. Take a look at it. This came out in 2007, guys, and look at how Altair adjusts his limbs to adapt to the objects in the environment as he scales up and down them. Notice how his arms and legs are procedurally animated to adapt to the different placements of small objects that are organically grabbable when you think of it as if it's in real life. This is heartbreaking for me because this has no longer been the case since Assassin's Creed Origins. The once elaborate wall climbing physics has now been reduced to very basic animations that are honestly quite repetitive to look at and simply boring. And this perfectly leads me to my number 3, actual wall climbing mechanics. Because the series has now went full RPG, which meant bigger and more geographically diverse game worlds, the intricacies of the man-made structures have now been significantly reduced. In the past, climbing walls involved decision-making and forethought, which makes you ask yourself, how can I go there when there's nothing to grab onto? You can't just push right trigger and scale up immediately, since the buildings in the old games are designed to be scaled with your brain turned on. You're not Spider-Man. Well, at least not until AC Origins came. Now you have the ability to stick to a perpendicular surface. Amazing. Number 4 are parkour mechanics. This is yet again another significant but more subtle omission. For those new fans, Assassin's Creed was originally planned to be a sequel to Prince of Persia, an awesome classic of a platforming game. And this shows in Altair and Ezio's parkour moves, unlike the AC games of today where there's just one button to move forward and 2 buttons to go up and down. Freerunning in the first 4 AC games were far more involved than this. You have the ability to grasp using the offhand button, which meant being able to grab walls further away from you and objects beside you. This is extremely useful when making risky jumps and course-correcting a badly timed fall. You can also side eject, which enabled you to bypass certain wall climbing animations and gives you faster traversal options and more freedom in freerunning. Also in the past, there used to be a super rare, awesome, almost impossible move that only OG assassins can do. It's called jumping. Number 5 is the gentle push. This is another small detail that helps sell the predatory nature of the assassins and further reinforced that blade in the crowd philosophy of the original games. Back then, crowds were a gameplay mechanic, not just set dressing for your eyes. Colliding with NPCs used to be a big deal because they won't automatically move out of your way, and bumping them in high profile mode will attract attention. When you use your offhand as you move through them, Altair and Ezio can move people out of their way gently, discreetly. And there's just something magical in slowly pushing your way through crowds silently until you get to your target. Number 6. Counter kills. Now I know a lot of us were already complaining against this in the past because it made the game easy, but after experiencing what the combat is right now, I say I still prefer the cool counter kill animations for every enemy rather than the boring button mash until the last enemy triggers the death animation. In the future, the lack of difficulty can be addressed by implementing non-one-shot kill counter moves. So, you'd still get those super cool awesome counter kill animations, but some enemies would require more than one counter for them to go down. This would create a greater flow of combat since you'd be more particular of which enemies require more counterattacks than the others.
You can't hit me!
Now we're down to our very last item. This is by far the most important of all the things I've mentioned. And this should have been the defining essence of Assassin's Creed. What's ironic about this is that we have been staring at it ever since the series started in 2007 up until today, but for some bizarre reason, we never see them mentioned in the games today. Ladies and gentlemen, it is none other than the Assassin's Creed. Yes, we all know the Brotherhood's infamous guiding philosophy, nothing is true, everything is permitted, which has now become so overused by this point. But this is just the maxim of the creed. There are still the three main moral tenets which comprise the Assassin's Creed and was the main driving force that started the very first game back when Altair broke all three of them. Let's hear Mentor Al-Mualim explaining the three tenets.
Three simple tenets, which you seem to forget. I will remind you. First and foremost, stay your blade.
From the flesh of an innocent. I know.
And stay your tongue, unless I give you leave to use it. If you are so familiar with this tenet, then why did you kill the old man inside the temple? He was innocent. He did not need to die. The second tenet is that which gives us strength. Hide in plain sight. Let the people mask you such that you become one with the crowd. Do you remember? Because as I hear it, you chose to expose yourself, drawing attention before you'd struck. The third and final tenet, the worst of all your betrayals. Never compromise the Brotherhood. Its meaning should be obvious. Your actions must never bring harm upon us, direct or indirect.
Now, I'm not saying that the game should be mentioning these tenets literally, but have both the story and gameplay reflect the implications of these three tenets. How about focusing back on stealth and blending with the crowds rather than encouraging open combat? The second tenet, hide in plain sight, doesn't strictly say that assassins should never be seen by anyone, period. Assassins are actually encouraged at times to display the kill in front of people. However, it is during the stalking of the target, just right before the kill, that an assassin should never be detected. That's why blending with the crowd and the environment used to be a big deal back then, but this all changed when Assassin's Creed 3's Connor came along. AC Unity may have attempted to return to this, but it was quickly scrapped for the next games. My biggest wish for the series is this, that the future games would attempt to explain through story and gameplay why these tenets matter, how they introduce moral struggles for the assassins, and how they affect the larger society around the Brotherhood. AC Origins may have provided a sufficient narrative on how these tenets came to be, along with the Brotherhood itself, but the only AC game that was able to challenge these tenets, tackle them head on, and flip them around its head was AC Rogue. Other than that, the majority of the Assassin's Creed games after the Ezio trilogy were more concerned with the personal stories of their protagonist, the time period where they are set in, and worse, the mythological backstories of those who came before. So that's all for me, guys. Please tell me, what do you want for the next Assassin's Creed game? What are the things you miss in the old games? I would really love to hear from you down in the comments section. I admit that this last one really got to me because the Assassin's Brotherhood has always been dear to my heart. I just wish that Ubisoft appreciates them as much as we do. Thanks again, guys, and take care. Bye bye.